Hey everybody, Rob with WePayOffDebt.ca. Hope you're doing well. Coming at you today with the one of the main topics that a lot of finance gurus out there in Canada especially talk about. And the question is TFSA versus RRSP. And I want to share a little bit about what I know with this. In terms of the details, know that I'm not a certified financial planner. I'm a guy who learned a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to share that today. If anything in this video is something different than what you know, I would love to hear it. Shoot me an email, rob@WePayOffDebt.ca. If you think something's wrong, if you think I've emphasized something incorrectly, please let me know. I would love to hear it. But that all said, let's just jump into it. So, first thing I would say, this is all a discussion around savings for retirement. That's what we're talking about today, specifically savings for retirement. I'll deal with savings for education in another video. Today, specifically saving around retirement and the question of which one of those to use for that. Now, with that, if you are saving for retirement at this point, well, the only way I would consider saving for retirement at this point is if you're on what we call baby steps 4, 5, and 6. You are done baby steps 1, 2, and 3. In other words, you have a significant, fully 3 to 6 months of expenses emergency fund made, and you are completely out of consumer debt, student loans included, every type of consumer debt, except possibly your mortgage. So your mortgage is maybe the only thing left. Okay, so at that point, the challenge in baby step 4 is to invest 15% of your income into retirement going forward. Okay. So let's first off talk about what the heck is a TFSA and what the heck is an RRSP. So what these are wrappers. Okay, an RRSP, more people seem to understand what an RRSP is. An RRSP is a wrapper, and you put the wrapper around any investment you want. So for instance, I could buy a stock inside of an RRSP, and what that would do is anything inside the RRSP will grow tax-free. Okay, so it grows year after year. So if I got in a stock, if I buy a Home Depot stock or what have you, and that stock, it becomes more valuable, it grows within the RRSP, and I don't pay taxes on it as it grows. Same with the TFSA. And people don't realize this because it's called a TFSA, tax-free savings account. Some people think it has to be a savings account. It's not. It's just a wrapper, just like an RRSP is. So in other words, I can buy a stock inside my TFSA. I can buy GICs, I can buy any investment vehicle I want, and of course, you can have a savings account in either of these, okay? That's what they are, the wrappers. Both of them grow tax-free, okay? Meaning that as they grow, you don't pay taxes on the growth. But, and here's the key difference, an RRSP is something called before tax, and a TFSA is something called after tax. So what's going on there? Most people know an RRSP, when you put money into an RRSP, you actually get money back at tax time. And the only reason for that, so if you put, say, $10,000 into an RRSP, what the government does is they pretend like you made $10,000 less money. That's what a tax credit is. When you put the money into the RRSP, the government pretends like you made $10,000 less income. Well, if you made $10,000 less income, then you shouldn't have paid taxes on that $10,000. That's how it works. That's what a tax credit is. And so when you file your taxes, you get a tax credit for that, and you get some money back, probably, because you overpaid on your taxes, in theory now, because you paid taxes on $60,000 a year when you only made $50,000 as far as the government's concerned. That makes sense? That's what it means by before tax. So they treat it as if you didn't pay tax on it. So this is great. It saves you money up front. The difference is that when you then take out the money, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, whenever you take it out, it then gets taxed. Okay? So if at that point it's grown to $2 million and you take it out, that gets charged as income at that point. Okay? So if you take out $2 million, it's as if you got paid $2 million, and that's a pretty substantial tax bill. Right? If you've got a 30% tax bill, we're talking about $600,000. It's a big deal. All right. On the other hand, TFSA is sort of the opposite. A TFSA, what you do there is when you put money in, you don't get a tax break at all. It doesn't affect your income, your taxable income for the year at all. It's treated as after-tax income. So you put the money in, no change. But, and here's the key, 30 years later, 20 years later, 10 years later, 40 years later, whenever later you withdraw it, it's tax-free. So when you withdraw that $2 million that it's grown to, it's all yours, no tax. Okay? So you don't pay tax as it grows, and when you take it out, you don't pay any taxes. So that's the gist of it. Watch that again if you need to. Now the question of which one's right for you. If you are putting away, let's say $500 a month, maybe that's your baby step 4, $500 a month. That's pretty low, but let's say $500 a month. If you put away $500 a month at 10% interest for 40 years, okay, 40 years, so you'd be 25 right now, getting ready to retire at 65. If you do that for 40 years, at the 40-year mark, you'll have about $3.2 million. Pretty substantial. As opposed to the fact, how much did you put in? How much of that is growth, and how much of that did you put in? Well, if you, in fact, only put in, of that $3.2 million, you put in the 0.2 essentially, 240,000. Okay? Huge percent. 3 million of it is growth. Okay? So now, and you can do that. You can do that regardless of whether you chose TFSA or RRSP. You can put that, if you put the $240,000 over the 40 years into a TFSA that made 10%, or you put it into an RRSP that made 10%, either way, it will grow exactly the same way, and 40 years from now, it'll be worth $3.2 million. Okay? So here's the question. Which one's better? Well, 40 years from now, if I had put everything into a TFSA up to that point, that $3.2 million is there. It's mine. I take it out, we're good to go. It's all mine, $3.2 million. If, on the other hand, I had put it into an RRSP, well, then when I take it out, it's all income. And so if I took it all out, I'm getting income tax on $3.2 million. Wow, that's, a third of that, probably around a third of that, so we're talking about $1 million. All of a sudden, the difference between these two is $0 taxes, $1 million taxes. And we're literally talking about a $1 million decision. Okay? This is insane. So obviously, when you look at it that way, the TFSA is the better way to go. So that's what I recommend people do. I recommend the TFSA pretty much across the board. If you get up there to the point where you're much older, the line does start crossing at a certain point, because if it's not going to be in there long enough to grow, well, then an RRSP might be more valuable. But that's the gist of it, and that might be all you need. Okay, so if you want to put this into a TFSA, you want to put your baby step 4 into a TFSA where it's growing, not just in a savings account. You want to actually put it somewhere where it's going to make money. Because what's the point of a TFSA if you put it in something that's not growing? If you put it in something that's growing at 1%, 2%, it's not worth it. You're wasting the TFSA room. Okay? So now let's get a little more advanced. So if that answers your question, great. You can turn off the video now. If you want to get a little more advanced, let's chat. So the thing that people bring up a lot on this is tax brackets. Because what happens is when you actually put money into an RRSP, you're not getting taxed on that money right now. So imagine if you're making, $500,000 right now. Well, the way tax brackets work is that they have a steady increase. And so if you're making $500,000, the last $100,000 you made between $400,000 and $500,000 in the year is taxed really heavily. It's really high. And so if you didn't make that, and you put that into an RRSP, so the government thinks acts like you didn't make it, well, you're saving a lot of taxes. Then you put that into an RRSP, and you now go through the next 40 years, it's worth a good chunk of money, and you now retire. Well, what happens in your retirement? You're not working, so you're not making $500,000 anymore. Maybe you've got a small pension, maybe you got whatever, but the majority of your income is coming from this RRSP. And so what that looks like then is, well, the RRSP, when you're withdrawing now, in much later, your taxable rate your tax bracket is much lower. You're at maybe the bottom tax bracket because you're withdrawing it. And so people will argue, no, RRSP can be much better in that case because you prevent yourself from paying the high tax bracket and end up paying the low tax bracket. Okay, so in other words, and if the tax bracket difference is 15%, well, you just saved 15% on that money. Okay, so that's a pretty big deal. But here's the challenge with that. In real life, when people start asking the question, okay, how much can I put away for retirement this year? They ask that, like you can ask yourself that right now. How much am I going to put away for retirement? And if you answer the question $500, okay, then you can put away $500 and you can choose if it's TFSA or an RRSP. If you put $500 into a TFSA, you'll get zero taxes on it. If you put $500 into RRSP, you'll get taxes on it. The point is, if you compare them equal like that, putting away $500, the TFSA wins. The trick there is the $500 in the TFSA is not as much money. Make sure I say this right. The $500 in the RRSP? Oh, this is confusing. When you put money in the RRSP, it lowers your taxable income. It's before tax money. It's actually more money. So if I put in $500 into an RRSP, that's $500 of taxes I didn't have to pay. And so you actually get more money back in your taxes next year. Okay? So if then you take that exact amount of money that you got extra, the exact amount of money you got extra that saved on your taxes because you put in the RRSP, if you take that exact amount of money and invest that into the RRSP as well, so you're investing more in the RRSP, what will happen is it will grow to a larger amount and you will be equal later. Meaning this, what I'm doing there is I'm actually putting more in the RRSP every single month. Okay, TFSA, RRSP, putting more in every single month. When I get to retirement, I have much, much more in the RRSP, of course, because it's grown. Well, at that point, you now take it out. Take out all of it, imagine. If you took out all of it, the difference from here to there is exactly the taxes. That when you take it out, you will have exactly the same amount. Okay? I know it's a little complicated. So what that means, practically, is if you're looking at your life and saying, okay, I've got $500 to invest a month. If you decide to put it into an RRSP, you have to up it. Okay? If you're going to put 500 in, 500 is not enough. That's the weird thing. If you're going to put 500 in, if you say to yourself, 500 a month, that's what I'm going to do, then you've got to say, okay, when I get my taxes back next year, or because of my tax return, or because I'm putting 500 in, I've got to put more in somehow. Okay, that's the only way it balances even. If you end up putting more, even more than just what you saved on taxes, great. But then here's the thing. Here's where so that's the argument for an RRSP. Let me give you the argument against. Most people sit down and say, okay, how much have I got to put in retirement? They decide on 500, they put it in. If then in the spring you get your taxes back and you decide you can put it in another $100, $200, I would just do it anyway in the TFSA. Okay, what it comes down to is, if you can take any money out of your budget to invest, do it in a TFSA. It really has the hidden effect of actually making you invest more, because $500 post-tax is investing more money than $500 pre-tax, because $500 post-tax had to be $700 in order to get the $500, right? You actually had to make $700, again, percentages working that out there. You had to make $700 in order to have $500 to be able to invest. So investing $500 after tax is actually investing more than $500 before tax. I hope that makes sense. Nice and confusing. The last thing I'll say about this is the question of, well, what about I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket? I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket, Rob. Okay. I'm working out the details where I'm going to have lots of money in retirement. That's my plan. I do not want to plan to be in a lower tax bracket. That's my plan. I don't know if that's your plan. If you're planning to be in a lower tax bracket, I think you're doing something wrong. I would rather have more money than less. Okay, so that talks about that. Now, all those details aside, of course, if you have any confusion or any concerns about whether this is right for you, I would talk to an estate planner. Talk to somebody, especially if you're thinking about what is going to happen after your death, because I'm not even sure how that stuff works. So if you're concerned about any of that stuff or you want more details, definitely go see an estate planner, sit down with somebody and get the details and make sure you understand it. That's the key. Whatever you're going to invest in, make sure you understand it. All right. Hopefully you found that useful. I know that's a lot of information, guys. The bottom line, TFSA all the way. So I would go in this 4 steps, in fact. Okay. So if you have a retirement, first off, I guess where you have a match. If you have a match somewhere, get the match first, because that's instant free money, guaranteed. So if what I mean by a match is your employer will, if you put $300 into their retirement plan, they'll give you $300 back, or something like that. Okay. So if you have a match, take that first. After a match, always get the TFSA. Okay? So if you have a match on a TFSA, that's even better, right? But match first, then TFSA, then RRSP. Okay? Again, match, TFSA, RRSP. So match TFSA is better than match RRSP. And then once the match is done, TFSA is better than RRSP. TFSA maxes out. There's a limit as to how much you can put in every year. There's a limit on how much you can put in, but you're allowed to catch up in previous years, so you can look up the details on that. But bottom line is, if you're saving for retirement, especially doing the Dave Ramsey plan, 15% of your income into retirement, always fill up that TFSA first. Okay? Hope you found that useful. If you did, share this video. I would love it if you could. If you had somebody that you knew that would find this useful, share this video with them. Let them know about the website, and hope that helps you. Have a good one. We'll talk to you again soon.